Welcome back to Les Schwab Tire Center's Outdoor GPS, presented by Fisherman's Marine and Outdoor. Now it's time for your weekend tech tip, brought to you by Chevy Silverado.
Welcome back, everyone. Now, it's the Chevy Silverado Tech Tip of the Week, specifically talking about the new Skinny Mini from Brad's Baits, right? Brad's Killer Fishing Gear. Make sure I get that correctly. People went nuts for this. It's a sportsman show for a reason. It is a very interesting bait, and it's all about the size. We've learned in the last decade, really, that downsizing some of these baits behind a 360 in particular is very effective. They're coming up and looking at that big flasher rotating, and they're thinking that there's the theory is that they're seeing that and they're thinking, oh man, there's other salmon up there. My buddies are up there eating, doing something. I got to get in there and work on their competitive attitude, or whatever you want to call it, right? And then they get up there and they see this little guy behind it. Oh, free meal, right? Well, these smaller baits, again, super popular, and the Skinny Mini being one of them. Question was about the rigging. So first things first, let's take a look at my preferred rigging for the standard or the original super bait. I like the beads. Okay, and there's a number of ways that you can rig these: triple hooks, trebles, single side wash. You can use bobber stops. You can use no beads. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you can do to rig the original super bait. But I just kind of fell on all the beads. It is an excessive amount of beads, I'll give you that. But I have found that that's where I have my success, and I just kind of stick with it. I do have a theory, though, on the beads. It does make things a little bit more rigid between where it goes through the bait itself and to the first hook, okay? Could be completely wrong there, but at least it makes sense in my mind, which shouldn't impress anybody. But so that's really the only thing I'm going to say here when you're talking about the Skinny Mini. Now, when you take a look at the size difference, you can see that they're pretty significantly different. It's very much skinnier, hence the name, and of course shorter, right? So here's how I would rig this up. I'm just going to basically scale things down. For the individual that asked the question, it was hook size and spacing. So what I've got here are two 2-aught. These happen to be red. I'll use red sometimes. A lot of times I don't, but I really don't mind using red hooks when I'm using super baits, and I happen to have a bunch of 2-aughts. So for these baits and for the other newer, smaller baits for behind 360s, again, in particular, I like these 2-aughts, and that's all we're going to use here. So it's two 2-aughts rigged up just like you're supposed to. They are fixed. I want about a half a finger's width, maybe a finger width between the two. I don't want a huge gap because I don't want to make this thing bigger than it needs to be. I'd like it to be compact, just like the reasoning behind the bait itself is that smaller profile. All right, so I've already got this tied up. It's 2 egg loops, and then of course they are fixed. I want my hooks, if at all possible, opposite, 180 of each other. I want one pointing up and one pointing down. Now, when you're tying that, it can be sometimes a challenge, but as long as you hit that, you at least got a hook point up and down, so when the fish does come up and grab it, that you have, you know, a little bit better odds of getting one of those hook points in there. It'll never cease to amaze me that how a fish can just destroy one of these things and not get a hook. It's just crazy. I haven't gone all the way to the treble hooks yet. There are several folks that do, and triple hook setups. I haven't gotten that far. Again, there's a lot of folks that really prefer that. Myself, I just kind of stick with the 2 hooks. Now, obviously, you can change that up as you want. Now, I mentioned real quickly that I kind of have a theory on the beads. I want my beads to kind of match with the particular bait. Of course, you can swap these out if you want to. There's a number of things that you can do to change the look of it, but I want beads that are going to be similar in color. But I also really like having some of these glow beads for a couple of reasons. One, these are 6mm beads, by the way. What I showed on the other one here, oh, excuse me, these are 5mm beads, forgive me. On the original bead, I like 6mm, and then at the very top, I like a bigger bead, and we're going to get to that in just a second. And what I'm doing here is I just slid down 2 glow beads on top of those red beads that I had, and then I'm going to struggle through this because I am not willing to wear my readers on television yet, because I'm still holding on to the fact that I'm not as old as I really am. But we all know that that's not the case. You can see, once you go through all these beads, you're just really looking for spacing that's going to keep your first hook, your top hook of the rigging away from the bait itself. You don't want that hook to get in the way of the rotation. And come on, just one more bead, dummy. There you go. Okay, so now the last bead that I'm going to put on here, which I kind of screwed that up already. I'm not going to go through it again because it'll just be totally horrible. But that bigger bead there, the 6 mil, I would want on top. Okay, because it just fills that hole in a little bit better. And then you just run your leader through here like you would any other of the super baits. And when it comes out, if you get it in there correctly, bingo. Now you're going to have the spacing where that hook is not, no matter what's going to happen with that spacing, with the beads, that hook is not going to get in the way of the tail as it rotates. Now you're going to go, okay, well, the way that it spins, even if it was a little bit closer to the tail, it really shouldn't touch. Well, I have found that it does at times, and it'll slow down the rotation, and I just don't like that. I want that hook, the first one here, to be far enough back. Again, it's not going to interfere with the super bait, and then, of course, I want that trailing hook relatively close. Yes, the fish will come up and short strike, but if you're keeping these baits, or excuse me, these hooks in this spacing, even if they do short strike it, there's going to be something close enough to get them. I'm really excited about this size of bait with the super baits. Again, just because it's going to be a little bit different look. The glow beads, the cool part about that is that they are a little bit of contrast. When it's darker water or the sun's low, whatever it might be, that might just give a little bit more bling to where the fish might just key in on a little bit better. Now, part of this tech tip today was supposed to be talking about herring. I'm probably going to postpone, but just real quickly, because I know the individual's watching, if I'm tying a mooching rig for cut plug herring, it's always going to be a fixed rig, and my hooks, based on the spacing, 4-finger width, and I don't want my hooks touching my hand. I want them separated just like that, okay? I want a good gap, because I want that trailing hook to be behind my cut plug green labeled herring. If I'm going to go smaller, I'd run it to my 3rd finger for red label. If I'm going to go bigger, which I don't do anymore with blues, we used to do that a lot. We might even need to again at some point. But that is my spacing for the herring. I don't want the bottom of the shank of the top hook or the eye of the bottom hook touching my fingers, and that's my spacing. So there you go. Hopefully that answers that part of the question as well. All right, we're going to cut to a break. When we come back, got to wrap things up, give you an idea of what we got going on for this upcoming weekend. It'll be another good one, I promise. We'll be right back.